No, I'm just doing this so I can record it. I like it better recorded this way than the other way. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we talk about what's called absolute value equations. Or absolute veiled equations, if that makes you feel better. Okay, and the thing to remember with absolute value signs, if you remember going way back to the end, let's just look at a very simplest, easiest absolute value you could ever come up. If I said the absolute value of x equals 5, just looking at that, you should be able to tell me what the answer to that is. And just looking at it, remember what absolute value does is, what's absolute value do? Absolute value, when you take the absolute value of something actually simply means the distance something is from 0. So breaking this down into its simplest little terms here, here's the number 0, okay? What numbers have a distance of 5 from 0? Well, you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 this way, but you can also go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 this way. You get two answers. X could either be a positive 5 or a negative 5 because both of those numbers have a distance of 5 from 0. Distance can't be negative, so you can't think about this as being a negative. You just have to think about this as being a distance of 5 this way and that being a distance of 5 that way. So really what you have to understand at this point is you are going to get, in absolute value equations, as you see all of these, you are going to get multiple answers, just 2 actually, but you will have to get 2 answers for each because there's going to be 2 differences there. Now this one is easy. I shall write down, let's write down this one. Absolute value of x equals 11. And then I'll give you the steps for it. Oh, drat. Not really smart on my part, which seems to be the norm. Okay, so let's do this. Start with the whole new screen. Ready? I'm really excited about this. Here we go. So absolute value of x equals 11. I'm going to give you the directions. Most of you will write them down and they won't make any sense to you, but some of you actually will catch on. Step number 1. First of all, remember this is an equation. You have to do what we call is isolate the absolute value sign. I am actually going to write down a different problem because this doesn't, most of this if I say it. Well, let's just agree, you know the answer to this is what?
Negative 11, negative 11.
Okay, the 2 answers to this, by the way, they will say you should put your answers in this little set notation, negative 11 and 11. Because there's 2 answers to it, you put it as a set, it's negative 11. I'm going to go all the way down to, I'm going to go down to letter E, okay? If you have the absolute value of x minus 5 plus 3 equals 3. The very first thing you have to do is isolate, Ellie Fox, the absolute value sign, which means I want to do everything, get rid of everything except what's in the absolute value sign. Okay? I want the absolute value sign, with whatever's in it, to be all by itself on one side, which simply means I got to get rid of what? The 3. And how do I get rid of a positive 3 in the equation? I subtract 3. I wish I would have done this problem out here because we ended up with a 0. So now I get the absolute value of x minus 5 is 0. Okay? Step number 1. You got to get this. In this case over here, if you're looking at this equation, the first thing you would do would be what? If I want to get rid of the 5 and get the absolute value sign by itself, I would divide by 5 because this is 5 times the absolute value. All right? Maybe that's not funny. All right. Step number 2. Okay. Once you isolate, oh, once the absolute value sign is isolated, you have to write two, count them, yes, two TWO equations. Okay. One, wait, sorry, let me change this. Right, two absolute value equations without the absolute value signs. One of them has to equal the negative of the answer. That won't make any sense till I show you. And that's why I hated that they showed me zero. We'll have to do another one that'll make more sense with it. All right, here we go. I'm going to talk very slowly and clearly. This is where most people run into a problem. Here's the deal. Once you get this by itself, you then need to write, oh, that's terrible. You need to write two equations from this. One of them, and you take away the absolute value sign, one of them is the equation just like it is. Okay? The other one, in this case, it doesn't matter because it's zero. You need to take this, it's still the same as this side, but it has to equal the negative of that thing. And unfortunately, negative zero is the same as zero. There's not really a negative zero. So this is one of those cases where the absolute value is only going to give you one answer because it ended up being zero. I wish I wouldn't have done it. I regret it now, but now. So what is my answer going to be? I still need to solve this equation. I need to move that 5 over there by adding 5. So x equals 5 for the left-hand side. X is also going to equal 5 for the right-hand side. You just have to write 1, 5 there. Actually, they would probably also put that in set notation. I don't know. I'm sorry for that. Can I give you another one? Yes, Mr. Ron, please do. Please, please do. Please release me, let me go. Let us what? Let me grab you one right from said worksheets of today. Wait, do I have a worksheet from today? I'm sorry, that was a bad example. Most of you won't. Max, did I lose you on that one? Do you feel relatively unconfident that you won't know exactly what's not going on? Or not? Yeah. So here we go. Let's go right for the juggler. So here's Shupa. Here is this equation here. I'm going to give you the hardest one humanly possible. But it's really not, this is really not that hard, per se. Okay, so step number 1 is you need to iso the absolute value sign, which means, think about this like an equation. Jacob, if this was the letter x and this just said 5x minus 8 equals 12, what would you do? Jacob, first thing you'd do is, let me change it. Let's pretend, Jacob, that this equation actually was 5 times x minus 8 equals 112. Pretend that the absolute value sign was just a single variable. How would you get the letter x by itself? When we solve the equation, what's the first thing you do? Don't there we go that. Tori, what would I do first? No, right, look right here. Don't have to look at your paper. If this was the case, I want x by itself. What do I get rid of first? Oh boy. Strike. What's that?
Subtract.
Yeah, you always get rid of the adding and subtracting stuff first. So you should add 8. That's what Jacob said. He just meant. So you need to add 8 to get it to the other side. Are you with me? So now I have this, correct? I got rid of the 8. Just like in an equation, I would add 8 and get rid of that there, and you get 120 there. Now, how do I get rid of the 5 in front of the absolute value that says 5 times the absolute value of 4x plus 4? Andrew, how do I get rid of 5 times? How do I get rid of 5 timesing? I divide by 5. Boom, boom. 120 divided by 5 is 24. Now I'm left with the absolute value of 4x plus 4, which just looks like a lot like a 1, but it's not. Okay, so here, ladies and gentlemen, is the time we pause for reflection. This is step number 2, where you have to make the 2 equations. What are those 2 equations? You take away the absolute value sign, you get a 4x plus 4 equals this 24. It stays the same for one of them, but the other one, you make 4x plus 4 has to equal a negative 24. One of them, this stays the same. This one, the other one, it becomes its opposite. And then you have to solve those equations like normal equations. This is getting more exciting by the moment. Which means you would subtract 4, you get 4x equals 20. So on this side over here, x is going to equal 5. And this side over here, when you subtract 4, you get a different answer because it's a negative 24 minus 4, which is a negative 28. If 4x equals negative 28, then x equals negative 7. So your 2 answers, the book would show it like this. You would get 5 and negative 7. Should I know that down? Now, looking at the examples they gave you here, most of them are very easy. But let's do 4 times the absolute value of y equals 24. 4 times the absolute value of y equals 24. Step number 1 there would be to do what, Colin Bocek? If I'm isolating the absolute value sign, I get?
Divide by 4.
All right, I need to get rid of this 4. I get rid of the 4 by dividing by it. I now have the absolute value of y equals 6. Once it's isolated, you write one just like it is, write the other one as its opposite. Game over for that, and that was a pretty simple one. Granted.
They should all be like that.
I don't. Would what be negative?
Like for the
First one
24.
ends up being just like it is. This 6 was not negative because none of this was negative. The second one is negative because you make it its negative for the other equation.
But then for that, wouldn't it be negative 4 times negative 6 would equal 1?
Now, Ty brought up a good thing that I probably should have showed you. Since these are the 2 answers I get for this problem, if I put those in for this, I should get this every time. So let me do it. 4 times the absolute value of a positive 6 should equal 24. And the other one, 4 times the absolute value of a negative 6 should also equal 24. What does absolute value do? It just changes everything to its positive. It doesn't change it to its opposite. If it's positive, it just stays positive. This is 4 times 6 is 24, works. This becomes a positive 6, and 4 times 6 also is 24. Oh. All right, I'm going to give you one to do. A lot of what you get assigned depends on how many people get this right. Do you want medium or hard?
Yeah, medium.
You get more credit for hard.
Hard.
Ready? 4 times absolute value of 5n minus 7.
Wow.
Minus 6 equals 106. 5 times absolute value of 5n minus 7 minus 6 equals 106. Step 1, isolate the absolute value. Step 2, write 2 equations from that. What's Andrew doing? Why is that? You can do this, Andrew. I have more confidence in you than you will get 2 answers.
that multiply by 40 divide by 7. Then you write your two equations.
Get something, Sam? If it works out, you probably did it right. How about that?
Yeah, but
It doesn't?
no.
Who says it does?
Oh, my
Say it
daughter
doesn't.
that's why.
Well, if you write it wrong, there's no chance. I'm not worried. I am worried.
Only one of them you can tell.
Yes.
One of them, yes. What do you mean there's two?
Andrew, at least drawing.
I did the first part. I did the first part today.
You can't get caught by 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, what? Second equation. Yeah, for the.
It is, can the answer be like a fraction?
No, wait.
Nothing comes to a second. And then
Yeah.
one of the other-
You could get a fraction.
When I'm out of school, I will never do a mathematical equation.
That's
Mr. Ron, I saw a joke yesterday. It said day 1012 getting out of college and still haven't used the Pythagoras theorem.
That's terrible, because you will use the Pythagoras theorem more than most
I'm
things.
not gonna make
Yeah,
a
what if you're
construction
like,
worker.
what if you're like me and
Jacob,
John, I'm not gonna build houses.
Jacob, give me an answer. Tori, give me an answer.
I only got 20 because
7 for one? Why did, they may not always work out nicely, just so you know.
Yeah, so you can.
You can get a fraction.
You can get a fraction.
didn't know that.
Let's take a quick gander here. See, there you go, Goose and the gander came up today, that was the joke. Add 6, you should have gotten 112 equals 4 times the absolute value of 5, 10 minus 7. Next step would be to divide by 4. 4 goes into 112 28 times. And it's at this point you need to write two equations from that. One of them, it stays just like it is. The other one, you make the 28 negative. So here, you add 7, you get 35. 5n equals 35, so one of them you're going to get 7. Here you add 7 again, you add 7 to a negative 28, you get negative 21. Divide by 5, divide by 5. So the other answer apparently is negative 21 fifths.
What's a square on 1/5? Negative 4.
Sure.
Yeah, I got negative
4.25, whatever you want.
I got it right. Yeah.
Just leave it as.
That's 7.
Now, the one special case I need to leave you with is this. Write this down.
Is it a whole nother note?
Jacob, are you ready? Because this problem is over. Over.
Already done.
Over. Can anybody tell me why it would be over? What does absolute value mean? I told you that. Distance from
0.
and distance can never be negative. If, write this down, if after you isolate the absolute value sign, you get a negative answer. It is no solution. I'll let you write that and then we'll talk about it just briefly. There is no way this problem could ever work because no matter what you put in the letter A and do work all this stuff inside, let's say, Jordan, just give me a number. 5. Let's say I said that A was 5. Watch what happens.
I got 8.
It's a no solution.
Oh,
All right, let's say, let me take Sam's answer because he got it. What'd you get?
8.
8?
I tried to.
Did you say 8?
8.
Okay, so let's say I got 8 for Sam's sake. So in the absolute value, you get negative 7 plus 4 times what Sam said I could get, which is an 8. I get negative 7 plus 32, right? What's negative 7 plus 32? 25, right? Understand this, once you do all the work in the absolute value sign, what does the absolute value sign do to something? It makes it positive. What do I have? No matter what I put in here, I'm always going to get a positive answer on this side. What does it have to equal though? A negative. It can't, ever. Okay, so if you ever come up with an absolute value sign, it doesn't matter what it is. If it equals a negative 39 or any negative, it's no solution because you can't do it. Now remember, it is only after you isolate the variable. Because if you could have something like this, watch. X plus 6, absolute value, minus 15 equals negative 8. This can be done, why? Right, because when I move this 15, I haven't isolated the variable yet. When I isolate this, I'm going to add 15 to this to get it to the other side, and I'm going to add 15 to this. It'll end up being a positive now, and you can do this problem. But after you had isolated, if I ended up with an x plus 6 equals a negative 7, then I can't do it because there's no way an absolute value can ever equal a negative, just the way it is. Make any sense to anybody but me? So you're saying, hey, let's give these a shot.
When are we gonna use the absolute value out of college?
Well, don't, Colin, don't tempt me.
How are you gonna get past high school without this?
Don't tempt me.